Hello, I'm Diane Gremmel from the New Era Times, an online newspaper for the new era. And today we are talking with contributor Deborah West. Deborah has a number of fascinating tales to tell. She is a writer, radio show host, and Deborah comes from mainstream media, but has now started to find her home in the world of psychic phenomena, UFOs, and all that is not mainstream. So it is wonderful to have you. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I find so interesting about the work that you do, you have an avid interest in understanding UFOs, other dimensions, the fact that we are existing in this world with other dimensions of beings. You feel this strongly, correct?
I do,
Okay.
and this is really based on interviews that I've done over the last couple of years with people who have written books, doctors, scientists, most of them have PhDs. They come from all over the world, London, Italy.
Why do we not hear more about this in mainstream media? That's where you come from, and that's what fascinates me.
That's really the tricky question. We sort of, in the world that we live in right now, mainstream media is controlled by a small group of people. It used to be much more accessible to be a news reporter, an investigative reporter.
Because you've written articles for like U.S. News and World Report and USA Today and things like that. You have a background in the most mainstream of mainstream publications.
Right, but everything that gets created on mainstream media is created from press releases that go through news desks that get approved. And so now we almost have a society now where our news is propaganda.
Homogenized.
It's
yes.
very propaganda, and we avoid producing news that now can question anything that the mainstream doesn't want us to know. I'm not
Who
a
do you feel that
conspiracist,
people?
but
Well, I am. So I'd like to know, who are the people that you feel are controlling the media? Is it worldwide? Is it just in the United States? How is this happening, or is it different in different parts of the world?
from what I hear, it is a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, there's countries that block out everything, like North Korea, where they don't give people access to the internet news that's out there.
Okay.
There's other countries that will allow more news to get reported. They have their own stations, so like Al Jazeera in the Middle East.
Okay.
What we report here in the United States goes right through CNN, right through PR Newswire and Business Wire, and it's all approved by the same people that approve military funding, that approve, government spending.
So there's government
Political, it's very political now, and this has
Okay.
really been a shift in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. It used to be that Watergate reporters would go out and cover news stories and actually
Get to find them.
uncover things.
Yes.
And so now we're in a suppressed environment with media, but the alternative news is really having a voice now, and people are listening.
The internet is a big part of that, isn't it?
There are so many sites out there, and so many people from mainstream media, similar to me, are so frustrated with not being able to report on things the way they're actually happening, that they have turned to alternative sites like the New Era Times, like Activist Post, Waking Times, the New American. I mean, there's just a whole laundry list of sites out there that will report reporters that are actually investigating stories, they're fact-checking things.
So these are not right-wing or left-wing, they're simply trying to report the truth.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And when you look at the reporters who are working for these, there are a lot of people who are pretty significant names in
I was really
literature
surprised. I
pieces.
mean, I didn't start out trying to write alternative news at all, and
But truth is now alternative news.
yes.
Yes.
And when I started writing articles, I would share information with some of the other reporters and look at their backgrounds. They come from NASA, they come from Bechtel, they come from some of our largest
Yes.
corporations. They know about sustainable energy, they know about anti-gravity devices, they know the stories, and they're reporting them, and they're not whistleblowers in the sense that they're trying to, tell somebody's story when they shouldn't. They're just trying to get the truth back in our minds.
It is amazing to me how much the scientific community has advanced in their understanding of consciousness and how little we're being allowed to understand or know. And so one of the things I like about the information that you give in your articles and on your radio show, you're really interested in letting us know, what is the scientific community doing now, and what do they know and why? And so one of the things that you mentioned to me earlier today that I found fascinating was that there were some material found in Australia that is clearly not of an earthly origin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Scientists can verify this.
There's remnants of material that's discovered at a site where it's suspected that there was a crash of a very large ship back in the early days of seeding planet Earth, actually.
Okay.
And the story that they know from Australia, from the original descendants there, is very, very commonly known, similar to what the Hopis know about their origins, and what some of the other societies, the Dogon tribe, who knows about their
so the Aborigines feel that they did come from above.
Pleiades, yes, and
Okay.
they have memories from past life memories. Not only that, but they can also verify through this material that there is a site where there's material that came from not of this earth.
Okay.
So some of the stories start to, they start to be validated now with a lot of the historical evidence that we're discovering, and a lot of the information that we get is coming through as on a frequency that many people can psychically connect to, which comes out from another dimension, that comes down through another dimension.
That brings me to another question. Can any of us, I know those of us, I am a psychic, so I'm very comfortable with receiving information that I can't see, hear, or put my finger on. But is it something that you feel like all of us on Earth are capable of, or certain people are more attuned to that energy?
The story that I'm hearing from the scientific and medical experts right now is that we are evolving energetically into the fourth dimension. So we're as the age of Aquarius, we're transforming. The Earth's energy is transforming into a new dimensional state, which is a higher frequency, a higher
So in other words,
density.
we're acting, feeling, sort of vibrating on a different level of behavior, activity, and thought than we have in the past.
And this will expand our chakra centers. It'll open up new portals on each of us individually, as well as the entire planet, for more access to interdimensional information.
That's an interesting thing. It's something I want to talk to you in the next segment about. I've heard that you have had discussions on this, that energetically we are expanding to where we are connecting some of us in a way. When we talk about the chakra system, we talk about the energy centers in the body, and that some of us are starting to connect in energy centers that are further outside of the realm of the physical body.
That's right. That's right. Because
yes.
as we move from a 3D environment into a higher, actually it's a less dense environment in the fourth density,
Yes.
we have access to these other frequencies. So in some ways, everybody has availability for expanded abilities, things like telepathy, teleportation, remote viewing.
I want to go into that, and so I want us to be able to have an expanded conversation about that. So when you think about when you talk about the different vibrations, is this something that there's any scientific theory about actually a change in the vibrational energy of the world, or a change in resonance, a change in magnetic fields? Is there something that the scientists have found that is currently in a process of change?
I think, well, for one thing, we can see other chakras forming on the human body. So some of the medical intuitives and medical experts are saying now that they can see, like, the 8th chakra.
Do things like Kirlian photography also show us a difference, or aura photography? Are we seeing
Yes.
some? Okay.
And much of that. And then from the scientific perspective, I think that we're understanding now that there are portals, there's different access to transportation into the cosmos, into the other universes that we're starting to uncover and we're starting to understand.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's it's like before when the concept of that we thought that the world was flat. We're starting to understand that there is a bigger universe of
Gravity
life out
does
there.
exist, and we do.
Right.
Yes.
And that, maybe Earth, we wonder, are we the most intelligent, most advanced species? I think that the general community of scientists now believes that that is not true. They believe that there's a greater universe out there, that there's a lot of populated planets. And
this is about what we're willing and ready to understand, and what we're willing and ready to get. And obviously there are people out there in mainstream media who don't believe we're all willing and ready to accept this. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick break, but Deborah West will be with us again. We're going to be talking about many fascinating things and her move from mainstream media to simply true media. I'm Diane Gremmel of the New Era Times. We'll be right back. Hello, this is Diane Gremmel for the New Era Times, an online newspaper for the New Era, and we are here with one of our favorite contributors, Deborah West, who is a fascinating person, a writer for mainstream media who has now made it into what she calls truth media. She has a radio program and is a prolific writer trying to spread the truth. And so Deborah, in spreading the truth, one of the things that has interested you of late is that scientists, but even more than that, people who work on the fringes of science with things like Kirlian photography and aura photography are starting to see the formation of an energy center that rises above us, like an 8th chakra, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So what's happening now is the Earth is hitting a higher frequency, and the energetic...
Meaning people are changing the energy with which they operate.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And what I'm being told from scientists and PhDs and all kinds of people that have investigated this phenomena, Dr. Jude Currivan, Dr. Robert Pettit, I did a recent interview with, talk about the concept of us opening up new frequencies of truth reality. Truth, so that we actually have a connection now to the greater cosmos that we didn't formerly have.
So what you're saying, the 8th chakra is simply a greater openness to what has always been out there.
Yes.
That we have sort of walked around with our little blanket above our heads, seeing what we want to see. And so do you think when we talk about mainstream media and the fact that some of it tends to not see the light of day, do you feel that part of that is their fear that we're not ready to accept that there is more out there than us?
Well, I think the general consensus is that mainstream media has a lot of secrecy. A huge percent of the U.S. population from recent polls show that they believe in extraterrestrials, they believe there's an existence of alien life and that there's more to the cosmos than just the Earth. But they also, a huge number of people also don't think that they're being told the truth.
Okay.
And I think the general consensus is that at the time of Roswell, many of the government officials at that time made a decision to lie to the public. They were warned not to. JFK was about to make a disclosure announcement.
Right.
We know what happened to him. Other government officials...
That's another show entirely.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Other government officials have warned us. It's kind of like they've stirred it up to be such a huge, vast amount of lies that they're not sure where to start with coming out with the truth. But what's happening now is there's a huge drive for the American public has had enough of it. In this country, the American citizens, with the use of internet, are coming forward in huge numbers, telling their stories, whether they're NASA scientists, whether they're medical doctors, whether they're people on vacation who have had an abduction scenario. They're being filmed for things like the Travel Channel and all kinds of other, there's Ancient Aliens, there's all kinds of shows that are talking now in an open format so that we can start to sort of figure out what is going on.
And what amazes me is that if you go back 20 or 30 years even to television and mainstream media, alien life has always been portrayed as a monster. And the reality seems to be, from the reports people are giving of their participation in abduction situations, that some of these beings are actually here to help us.
Right, and the reports I'm getting is that we have a lot of beings. It's not just a couple of species out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of species. And in just our galaxy alone, there's many planets that are populated. And this is coming from...
Do we know that as the government?
We don't... Our government, from what people tell me, our government does know that. Our government has had technology exchange contracts with some of the aliens called the Greys. And they have done experimentations in underground bunkers. They've worked together with them. They've tried to...
Are the Greys the ones that were originally thought to have crashed at Roswell?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But in the meantime, we figured out that there's much highly evolved advanced species, more benevolent beings that we would probably rather be working with, like from Sirius, from the Pleiades, from Andromeda, the Arcturians. There's a lot of advanced scientists from the galactic community that understand medical science far beyond what we currently know.
And interestingly, an interesting question comes to me. Do you feel, I know that many people have had contact from a higher vibration of beings. Do you feel that they also walk among us?
On this planet?
Yes.
I get the sense that they can materialize here in the form of an actual being that we could look at,
Yes.
so to speak. But the way they exist is more in a light form, a plasma energy. It's an interactive energy. So they don't need to materialize to be present.
Right.
It's more of an exchange of intergalactic light.
There are people who have felt that they have interactions with beings on this planet, such as the Men in Black, who might have been of extraterrestrial origin. And so my question was really whether you felt that that was possible for them to be incarnate
It's
in a way that
certainly,
appears
it's certainly
human.
within the realm of possibility from what
Okay.
I'm hearing. And I mean, there's even a story of the black-eyed children that's come out. David Weatherly has a new book out that
Yes.
talks about that. I mean,
Okay.
that's a phenomenon where there's beings that don't appear to be human, that give off a funny scent, that have black pupils. They could be coming from a planet where they're more of an insectoid type species, and they're
Okay.
trying to incarnate here, and they're trying to see if they can interact with us.
Okay.
Some of the beings are a lot easier to, they're more human-like. The story basically is that we came from alien DNA, similar
Right.
to what, Eric von Däniken and
Right.
Zacharias Sitchin would say.
Chariots of the Gods. And
Right,
yes.
in an expanded way, that we actually originated being seeded by the star beings, and so the fact that they're here among us now is not unusual.
Because we are them.
We are them. yeah.
Okay, so when you talk about the benevolent beings, you feel like there are several groups of benevolent beings trying to help us to keep from destroying ourselves, correct?
Right, because we've done it before. So we've evolved to the point where we had advanced technology, we had interaction with star beings during the time of Atlantis and before, where we actually used our technology to destroy our planet. We're now coming of age where we have new technology like HARP, which is controlling the weather. We have technology to get through portals and go into outer space. We're in the position now where we could be doing the same thing, and the benevolent beings are trying to help us avoid that.
Okay, and when you talk about portals, this is something that there is scientific proof of the ability for us to go through like wormholes or portals or, okay, and that is something that you feel that they are working on currently.
We have the technology right for that.
Okay.
And what's hard right now is that because we are not being told the truth, is that many of the starships that we see flying around are actually our own.
Yes.
They're American made.
Absolutely.
So it becomes kind of confusing because
Yes.
then somebody's reporting something and we're not really sure what it is. But the theory is that there's bases all over the planet.
Yes.
And there's portals of entry. This is not unusual. The star
Correct.
beings used to come and go all the time.
So what do you say to those people? I've had experience with this type of a situation of visitation myself. I believe you have, correct? So when you talk to the people who have had specific interaction with interdimensional beings, what is it that the interdimensional beings want us to know?
What they want us to know is that we need to establish our sovereignty as a nation.
Okay.
We need to understand that we are Earthlings, that we own this planet, and that we need to protect it. The Earth is a being. It's
A biological entity.
Yes.
Yes.
And we need to understand and accept that we have responsibility towards the Earth
Okay.
as our home planet. And that we also need to understand that in order to become part of the galactic society, we need to be a peaceful nation.
Okay.
We need to understand a way to live, maybe the law of one, or a unity consciousness, or a God consciousness. There's a lot of different things floating around, but we all need to embrace that and live that.
Okay.
Because we're not going to be allowed to join the greater society, the Galactic Federation, until we can do that.
Okay. And so these are messages that have come through. We talked earlier about many people who have come forward with specific incidents where they feel they were abducted or they feel that they encountered beings from another galaxy. And these are credible people, correct?
They're very credible people.
Okay.
And I mean, Patricia Corey is one of them that I've talked to extensively, and she has written books back in the 80s that now when you read them, the Syrian Revelations, you read them, she was actually woken up in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, and told to get out a pen and a piece of paper, and she was writing information that she had no way of knowing. Quantum physics, history. And
I've heard
origin
about
of
that, yes.
You know,
Interesting.
many people out there have had this same experience. Well, it's no different than Nostradamus or anybody else from our past, Plato and Nikola Tesla. I mean, we know that experience is real. We've seen it happen repeatedly over and over in our own history. But basically what you have to understand is that when they contact you and you're open for the transmission, that it's a benevolent contact. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be frightened. You don't need to fear the extraterrestrials, except that you have to understand that they're not all the same.
Correct.
And they don't all have the same agenda.
Okay.
So it's just like if you're in New York City at night, you don't go around saying hello to everybody.
That's a very good analogy. So, folks, with the universe being very much like New York City, and I do like that analogy, I'm Diane Gremmel with the New Era Times. We'll be right back with Deborah West. We're going to be talking about extraterrestrials, the United States government, and just how much they want us to know. We'll be right back. Hello, this is Diane Gremmel. I'm back with the New Era Times and Deborah West, who's talking to us today about all things not mainstream media. And we've been talking about UFOs, intergalactic communication, and beings, and what the government would and would not like us to know. So, Deborah, recently there has been some talk of making a greater disclosure through the government about what has gone on in our past with things like Roswell. Can you tell me about that?
Well, there's a movie coming out by Dr. Stephen Greer, and for the last 20 years he has led programs like the Disclosure Organization.
Okay.
His main mission, he's a medical doctor,
Okay.
and he, like most of us, had no intention of kind of going into alternative media and alternative reporting, but he found that what we knew about alien civilizations was being suppressed, and it was his biggest concern was that it was causing us not to have access to free energy.
Okay.
So the government and how a medical doctor went from that to, you know, supporting
That's a huge
it's a huge story, but his movie is called The Serious Documentary. He has a famous director, the director that did The Shawshank Redemption. He's being it's previewing this week in LA. It's on the Huffington Post front page. It's making huge news, and he's got thousands of reports from astronauts and physicists, ordinary people, government officials, politicians.
Saying we know this is going on.
Right.
So I've heard there's talk of some ex-congressmen. Is there some type of congressional hearing that's going
There's
on?
also in synchronicity with that, and
Yes.
it's a weird synchronicity. It's almost curious that it's all happening at the same time.
I don't think it's curious at all.
Right.
Yes.
But there is a disclosure
Yes.
hearing at the same time in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
We all know the Vatican is preparing statements right now as far as disclosure. Their most recent press releases from several years ago was that the ETs are our friends, that there's no limit to God's creativity. They have the largest telescope on the planet. They've been searching for extraterrestrial life fervently, and they have an archive of information we'd love to have.
So we're evolving as a species to the point where we are not going to be able to deny that there are others within our galaxy.
That's right. In addition to that, the reports of abductions on the planet right now are tremendous.
That's something I wanted to ask you about, because one of the most fascinating stories in the last 60 years was that of a couple named Betty and Barney Hill. And I know they've passed away, but you, I understand, were able to speak with their niece. Is that correct?
I did. I spoke to Kathy Marden just last week, and she is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill.
Mhm.
She's actually she's written several books. She's had several books out about alien encounters, abductions, and things like that.
Okay.
Her most recent book is coming out May 20th. And basically, Kathy's message is that over 5 million people in the United States alone have reported abduction scenarios. She was actually filming a TV segment for the Travel Channel, and the Travel Channel is going to air a show in the fall about people who were abducted on vacation.
Fabulous.
So it's that commonplace. It's something that is happening on a regular basis in this country right now, and people are starting to talk about it. So it's exciting. It's exciting.
It's surprising to me how many people, especially within the metaphysical community that I speak with, will say, "Oh yeah, happened to me."
Right.
And it's
well,
just
and what's
pretty
happening is
standard.
that people are sharing more and more of their stories, whether they're just all of a sudden starting to have some spontaneous memory of what actually happened, or whether they're just willing at this time to actually come forward. But the stories are very similar, and in many of the cases that seemed frightening at first, there was talk of medical examinations. There was talk of people being shown hybrid children, things like that. And the way Betty, who's spoken to all these,
Betty Hill.
I'm sorry, Betty's niece, Kathy, who's
Okay.
spoken to a lot of these abductees. Betty Hill herself had an experience where they were taking ovum from her body.
Yes.
So what Kathy says is happening is that the benevolent species who are trying to help us evolve are actually doing medical examinations and genetic DNA upgrading of our species.
And that's something that people have been suspecting for a long time.
Right. We've
Yes.
suspected this for a long time. Perhaps this will come out as something that we can all understand and relate to through the exposure of so many people talking about their story.
Okay.
And in the sense that we can also start understanding who we are as a society, as an Earth being, and how we can interact with all these other species in such a way that it's peaceful.
Interesting question. I hope it's an interesting question. When we look at the different nations that are in the world, are the extraterrestrials specifically targeting certain nations as having the type of energy that can understand and accept this more than others?
We don't, from what I can see, the phenomenon is not U.S. based.
There's
alone.
a lot of evidence in South
There's
American
evidence in
countries,
China.
Russia, yes.
Russia is huge in
Yes.
UFO. Germany, South America. I mean, it's a worldwide
So they're
phenomenon.
attempting
It's
to make
worldwide.
contact everywhere.
The story was that the Chinese are putting a lot of pressure on the U.S. government to disclose, and that if we don't do it, they're going to.
Okay.
They haven't yet, but there's a lot of disclosure in countries all over right
Yes.
now. So
Yes.
it's going to be an interesting time. It really is. And going back to the abduction scenario, what's really interesting is a lot of the people tell the same story. They talk about the Greys who are able to comfort them. By touching them below the elbow, they can give them a sort of a neurostimulation that makes them feel soothed and calm, even in the face of something that's considered a little bit shocking, right? Oh my gosh, I'm woken up in the middle of the night. I'm aboard an alien spacecraft.
Yes.
There's a calming feeling that this little gray being is allowed to, that's able to transfer to them.
Yes.
Then during the medical examination, while this being is helping calm them, they all report a similar instance where there's scientists and medical doctors who represent these different species. So as you weave the stories together, they all start to make more sense, and they seem to have very common threads.
So the more people begin to speak about this, the more we're going to be able to see, wow, this all fits. The people in Russia are having the same experience as the people in China are having the same experience as the people in Bolivia, who are having the same experience
Right.
as the people in...
And one of the things exciting that just came out recently, in fact,
Yes.
in the last couple of weeks for me, was more and more people that I talk to, because they just keep kind of coming my way as I started doing this reporting, will talk about the contact that they have with their home planet, whether it's the Pleiades or the Sirius or
So
what have
people are
you.
starting to feel like my home was over there, or I come from a place that was over there. They're starting to have a feeling of connection with
Right.
certain areas of the universe.
Right,
That's
and
interesting.
perhaps maybe they have spent time there in a different incarnation or
Okay.
something like that. But most recently I talked to a girl who said, who brings a lot of information about technology and about healthcare from the Palladian system, and talking about sort of the hybrid geoengineering of a species. Well, she's explaining the incident of autism in this country as part of this program of we have an evolved species, we have a more evolved being that's being incarnated right now. And it's very interesting to think about the fact that they can't really absorb this new energy yet, but that they're a highly evolved, we all know that they're highly evolved, highly conscious species.
Yes.
And this is the generation that's going to take over, and this is what the revival is all about. So I'm very excited to sort of hear that these new evolved species are going to be here, the fifth root race, the age of Aquarius, to sort of see this all come to fruition.
Okay. You spoke earlier today, we were speaking, and you mentioned that the raw materials were something that were very interesting to you in connection with all that we're talking about today. Is that correct?
It is. The raw material is really fascinating. It's channeled material from the 80s. I spoke to Carla Ruckert, who was the original, one of the original three that produced the material.
Okay.
I have one of the books
Oh,
here.
okay. Fantastic.
It's on the internet. It's not been very widely publicized, but it's coming of age right now.
Right.
They have been in contact with humanity before, during the time of the Egyptians.
Who is they?
Ra is a social memory complex.
Okay.
It's a group soul.
Okay.
It's a highly evolved being from the sixth density.
Okay.
They have incarnated on the planet in the past. During the times of Atlantis, they came here as a Atlantean priest by the name of Rata, who was actually the first incarnation of Edgar Cayce.
Okay.
Story goes.
And, okay, so this is something that Edgar Cayce might himself corroborate if he were alive.
Cayce talked about the raw material quite a bit and the Law of
Interesting.
One in his books, right? And what's interesting about the Law of One is it talks again about the concept.
Yes, what is the Law of One for those of us who are not familiar with it?
Right, so the Law of One is basically that we are all co-creators and that we are all together here
Okay.
as a species, and that the law is so simple. It goes back to basics. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
Treat others the way you would like to be treated. The simple concept of letting go of things like resentments, forgivenesses, leading a life of gratitude and forgiveness, and giving up things like jealousy and greed.
Okay.
How simple.
Almost biblical, isn't it?
Very.
Yes.
And this material is from hundreds of thousands of years ago. So.
Okay. So the raw materials are starting to become popular again?
I see them written about more and more these days. I think that more people are starting to resonate with things like that and sort of going away from the mainstream religious doctrines. Although we can sort of take a lot of the mythology of our religion and use it as concepts for understanding
Yes.
our past, understanding how we can evolve. It's not that we have to wipe out any of the religious
There are
concepts that
certain
we have.
ways of telling the same story.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this message is always the same. I mean, the message in Christianity is the same as the message in Buddhism and Hinduism and every place. So the concept of, love one another is our overall religious concept.
So if you were to sum up the real message today that those from other places within our galaxy would like us to know?
I think the big message that they would like us to know is that they're here for us. They can't come and do it. They are cheering us on. We are able to contact them by the act of free will, so that each individual, as you want to evolve and you want to make contact and you want to understand and discern what the truth is for yourself, can take the opportunity to reach out. And whether you're calling it your spirit guide, the angelic realm, the Syrian High Council, it doesn't matter. You're reaching up for a higher frequency.
Reach for knowledge.
That's right.
Fantastic. And we are so grateful that Deborah West is going to continue spreading truth and knowledge through her writing and through her radio show. It has been a pleasure. She is also a regular and frequent contributor to the New Era Times. And so for the New Era Times, I want to thank Deborah West for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.